Oh, hey, didn't see you come in there. So, William Shakespeare is writing sonnets, and lots of them are sad. He's in love, and love sucks. And this person that he's writing to, this smoldering little heartbreaker, is running around and having fun and leaving Shakespeare alone at home, and so, mopey poems. Because, when you feel alone and rejected, everything can start to seem terrible. And so lots of these love poems are actually about feelings of fear and inadequacy and jealousy. And it's made even worse when you have other poets. Whoa, what is...
Ah, much better. Hey everybody, let's talk about the rival poet. Now, the third character in Shakespeare's sonnets is the mysterious character known as the rival poet. He shows up just as Shakespeare is whining to his young man about his unrequited love, and it's clear that he immediately intimidates the crap out of Shakespeare. And unlike Shakespeare, who never seems to stop talking, the rival poet is in only 8 sonnets, sonnets 78 to 86, because he knows how to make a cameo and leave you wanting more. Now, in sonnet 78, Shakespeare says, "Thine eyes, that taught the dumb on high to sing, and heavy ignorance aloft to fly, have added feathers to the learned's wing, and given grace a double majesty." Well, he's saying that the young man's so inspiring, he teaches everyone to write good poems. Others, better writers, he refers to himself as dumb and ignorant, and then talks about someone else learned and full of grace.
Oh, this is one of the reasons that a lot of people think that the rival poet might have been Ben Jonson, because apparently Ben Jonson and Shakespeare used to have this famous rivalry where Ben Jonson would always accuse Shakespeare of being just some ignorant farm boy from the country, and Shakespeare would always call Jonson too fancy pants and overeducated. Apparently, there was this tavern in London called the Mermaid where they would get drunk and have these long debates into the night, which must have been amazing.
And mute. Now, we keep seeing the rival poet for the next few poems, and Shakespeare is all twisted up with jealousy. Well, he admits that the rival poet is a better poet, like in Sonnet 79. "I grant, sweet love, thy lovely argument deserves the travail of a worthier pen." Or Sonnet 80. "Oh, how I faint when I of you do write, knowing a better spirit doth use your name," and wonders how he can compete with such a worthy, educated writer. But Shakespeare knows that his weakness is actually his strength. He goes back to that earlier idea about flattery. Mr. Smarty Pants fancy writer rival poet might know all the best classical allusions and whatever, but Shakespeare will write the simple truth. He says that anyone who adds to the young man actually detracts from the young man. Sonnet 82. "Thou, truly fair, wert truly sympathized in true plain words by thy true-telling friend." And Sonnet 84. "Which can say more than this rich praise, that you alone are you?" But by Sonnet 86, Shakespeare says the rival poet and his muse, "As victors of my silence cannot boast, I was not sick of any fear from thence. But when your countenance filled up this line, then lacked I matter that enfeebled mine." He says that it's not the rival poet that scares him, but seeing the young man in the rival's verses. Sound about right, Sam?
Sure. But also, there's the...
It gets even worse for Shakespeare because the young man's friendship with the rival poet is too much for him to take. Sonnet 87 starts, "Farewell, thou art too dear for my possessing," trying to push him away. But the next sequence of sonnets are all pleas for the young man to return. Well, apologies for not being good enough, and angry lines about how the young man is too cruel. In his despair, the poet only cares about one thing: having his love requited. In Sonnet 91, the poet says that all honors and riches worthy to other people are nothing compared to the worth of love.
Some glory in their birth, some in their skill, some in their wealth, some in their body's force. Some in their garments, though newfangled ill, some in their hawks and hounds, some in their horse. And every humour hath its adjunct pleasure, wherein it finds a joy above the rest. But these particulars are not my measure. All these I better in one general best. Thy love is better than high birth to me, richer than wealth, prouder than garments cost, of more delight than hawks or horses be, and having thee, of all men's pride I boast. Wretched in this alone, that thou mayst take all this away, and me most wretched make.
And maybe it's this feeling of helplessness and total desperation for the young man that leads to the next big plot point in the sonnets. In Sonnet 110, the poet makes it pretty clear that this time he's the one who's got some action elsewhere. Alas, 'tis true, I have gone here and there. And Sonnet 11:1 carries on, "Oh, for my sake do you with fortune chide, the guilty goddess of my harmful deeds." The poet did something to betray the young man, and for the next several sonnets, he wrestles with that. Sometimes he apologizes, sometimes he says that it's no worse than what the young man has done, but everything is messed up. In Sonnet 112, it's almost like Shakespeare just throws everything away. His shame, his anger, even his fear, as he makes an enormous plea to have the young man take him back.
Your love and pity doth the impression fill, which vulgar scandal stamped upon my brow. For what care I, who calls me well or ill, so you o'ergreen my bad? My good allow? You are my all the world, and I must strive to know my shames and praises from your tongue. None else to me, nor I to none alive, that my steeled sense or changes right or wrong. In so profound abysm I throw all care of others' voices, that my adder's sense to critic and to flatterer stopped are. Mark how with my neglect I do dispense. You are so strongly in my purpose bred, that all the world besides, methinks, are dead.
You are my all the world. This is everything on the line, but it is not enough to keep things stable. All that Shakespeare wants at this point is permanence, something solid, something lasting. That's why he wrote maybe the most famous sonnet of all, Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. He says that love is not love, that alters when it alteration finds, or bends when the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is astoundingly gorgeous poetry, and it makes for a great thing to put on the back of a program at the wedding. But Shakespeare is describing an impossible dream. His love is so tumultuous, so unstable, that this beautiful poem is him begging for what he does not have. And within a mere 10 poems, he says his goodbye to the young man. Sonnet 126 is addressed so specifically to, "O thou my lovely boy." It's an odd poem. Instead of the usual rhyme scheme, it's all rhyming couplets, as though every single line is an ending. And it's shorter than any other sonnets, missing the last 2 lines as though it's still incomplete, as though there's still something more to say. But as heartbreaking as it might be, there isn't.
Oh, yes, well, that's depressing. But even though there's nothing left to say, there is something left to read. Shakespeare's great work was to fight against time and decay, to use the power of his poetry to keep love and beauty alive. And what's amazing is that despite all of the pain in these poems, that's exactly what he does. Here we are, still reading about it. His poetry kept his love alive, not for him, but for us. Which is why it is so amazing to me that Shakespeare was so obsessed with his own inadequacy. There are so many sonnets that wrestle with insecurity, where Shakespeare says that his poems are no good, that he's lost for words, that he's worthless. Going way back to Sonnet 29, he expresses this idea almost perfectly, putting into words a sensation that every one of us have felt. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I, all alone, beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy contented least. Yet, in this state, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered, such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. Everyone's better than me, I wish I had what they have, everything I do sucks. Who hasn't felt that? And this is Shakespeare! This is the greatest writer that ever lived, and he thinks that he's worthless. Just what does that tell you? Because for him, and for many of us, love and fear are two sides of the same coin. They are both a deep hunger, wanting something to help make us feel safe and seen and complete. We're tempted to ask, was this love, which did not work out, was it worth all the pain? But that's a question that we don't have answered. The fact is, it happened. Love, like time, like madness, like nature, it's not something that we can control. It is a truth, a deeply human truth, and truths can be painful. Is it worth it? I don't know, but I do know that it's no accident that we have been reading these poems for more than 400 years. Something in this, the love or the pain or the truth, connects with us. It is us. And whatever that is, even if it is painful, we can't seem to get enough of it. A huge thanks to Ed Gero and Brian Manny for their sonnets for this episode. They aren't rivals, but they did each play Falstaff in the most recent season at the Folger Shakespeare Theatre. And a giant thanks to Topher Embrey from the American Shakespeare Center for guest starring as this episode's rival poet. Like and subscribe and all that stuff, and tune in next week as we complete our journey through the sonnets and meet our final character, the Dark Lady.